Thank you, Deep Clywyd. A rare disease is one that is categorised as affecting less than 1 in 2,000 people. And unfortunately, many of these rare conditions can evade detection for years. This is because they can present a wide variety of symptoms which often appear unrelated, and although rare diseases may be individually infrequent, they are collectively common, with 1 in 17 people being affected by a rare disease at some point in their lives. Whilst there are some who can carry on as normal, as their symptoms are relatively mild, the majority of sufferers end up with living very difficult and limited lives. Take, for example, those who suffer from epidermolysis bullosa, or EB, a rare genetic skin blistering condition, often referred to as butterfly skin because of its fragility. This rare disease causes skin to blister and tear at the slightest touch. It causes excruciating lifelong pain and can have a devastating impact on the physical and mental well-being of sufferers. In many cases, on top of the condition itself, sufferers must endure several hours of daily bandaging and unbandaging of their most affected parts, which is astonishingly painful as the skin is ripped away with the bandage. In its most severe form, EB also affects the eyes, where blinking results in intense pain, and the internal organs, where eating and drinking causes severe problems, all of which requires extensive health care. Many people who suffer rare diseases such as EB also spend their lives in the shadow of their respective conditions. That is to say, it impacts on many aspects of their lives, stopping them or limiting them from socializing, from forming relationships, and from being able to work or travel. Survey data has shown that 60% of adults with a rare disease have said that they struggle to hold paid employment, meaning on top of their health conditions, they also have to worry about finances or potentially losing their job and not being able to find another. Moreover, almost 70% of rare diseases are exclusively pediatric onset, meaning that children who have these diseases are often robbed of their childhood as well. Sadly, 95% of rare diseases do not have a licensed treatment, meaning not only do patients have to deal with the devastating consequences of these conditions, they also have to live with the knowledge that the only treatment they can expect to receive is limited to dealing with the symptoms they present, rather than the actual disease itself. The journey to diagnosis can be lengthy and seemingly inefficient. Whilst waiting for diagnosis, patients and their families can unfortunately suffer from an absence of suitable care. Receiving diagnosis of any disease can be incredibly tough, and when there is very little knowledge of the disease and the complexity of many rare conditions, it often becomes very challenging to manage, leading to further confusion and isolation for the sufferer. This is often exacerbated by the fact that doctors trying to treat them may simply not have heard of the disease, and therefore, in many cases, there's no coordinated approach to health services. I think we can all agree that this must be absolutely terrifying for those going through this, to think that the pain you may be suffering and the symptoms that keep reoccurring are never going to go away. And the future you face is one where there's a very high chance of no medical treatment whatsoever being available to you. And this brings me to the point of this debate. I want to raise awareness that there are staggering numbers of drugs out there that have already been past all clinical trials, been brought to the market, and have the potential to treat thousands of rare diseases, but we're not allocating sufficient resources to studying how these existing drugs can be repurposed. While several successful drugs have been repurposed for rare diseases, such as sirolimus to treat autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome, ALPS, and nitisinone, the first licensed drug for the treatment of alkaptonuria, after previously being used for tyrosinemia type 1, they have mostly been discovered by serendipity. Repurposing drugs for rare diseases is a win-win scenario. Not only is there a substantially reduced timeline for drug development and lower costs of development due to reduced risks of failure in clinical trials, they also offer patients a possibility of life-changing treatments, a cure or significantly improved health, without the need to wait decades before a specific drug for their condition can be developed. I acknowledge that the Welsh Government's initiatives already in place, including the Wales Rare Diseases Action Plan 2022 to 2026 and the £80 million new treatment fund, have significantly sped up access to innovative new medicines in Wales, especially for sufferers of cystic fibrosis and Fabry, Gaucher and Batten diseases. I'm also aware that the UK Rare Diseases Framework, and as part of this in Wales, we had the genomic CAFs organised by the Wales Gene Park, which are informal opportunities for individuals to meet others and to find out more about the new advances in genomic medicine in Wales. We also have the Patient and Public Sounding Board initiative, led by the Genomics Partnership Wales, GPW, which is helping patients and members of the public with personal or family experiences of rare diseases. However, that said, and whilst it feels like a lot is going on, there are as many as 175,000 rare disease sufferers in Wales who would undoubtedly argue that nowhere near enough is being done, especially since they know that they could likely be drugs already in existence that could substantially relieve or even cure their condition. There are overwhelming reasons why we should be invested in this. Not only would we be able to substantially improve the quality of life for people that suffer with rare disease, but we can reduce the amount of care that has to be provided by family and social services. And this is by no means a small thing. Some rare diseases, such as EB, as I have mentioned, make prisoners of those who suffer and care for the person. Very often, sufferers have to travel long distances to receive treatment, which has a huge impact on the finances of the families, having to maybe find childcare for other children, having to take time off work, as well as travel costs. And it is right that we utilise to the best of our ability the knowledge and the drugs that we already have to the best of our ability. We have to be mindful that it is extremely difficult and unlikely that new drugs would be developed for the many as these 7,000 plus rare diseases. Firstly, there are few incentives for companies to spend huge amounts of money developing drugs and pursuing licenses for such a small population of sufferers. Secondly, the health technology assessment bodies, such as the All Wales Medicine Strategy Group and NICE, who make the decisions on commissioning and purchasing these drugs, have to balance between the need for treatment for all patients against fixed resources, and considering that it is nowhere near cost-effective to develop new drugs for these patients, it is unlikely that many patients will ever receive them. Though it is not the overwhelming reason to invest in repurposing drugs, there are also potentially huge financial savings to be made for the NHS as well. The current budget for specialised services that treat these patients is currently around 10% of the NHS spending. Someone with severe EB, for instance, costs the NHS around £46,000 per year, and freeing up some of those resources will undoubtedly help the NHS to provide better services elsewhere. Trial research at King's College London has found that when certain drugs were repurposed for EB sufferers, one of these drugs was actually reported to have a substantially improved wound healing and reduced skin itch by 60%, thus drastically reducing the daily and damaging bandaging time. They also found that this reduced the stress on the family supporting the patient and the amount of time needed to care for them. In turn, this saved time and money for the NHS, with fewer outpatient appointments needed and fewer medical supplies required. Moreover, studies by the London School of Economics in 2016 and 2022 reported that rare diseases, again such as EB, have a wider economic impact as parents and family members reduce labour market participation due to informal care of their loved ones. The same study also revealed a higher prevalence of psychological and psychiatric symptoms among those with EB and their families, which added substantially additional costs associated with the need for mental health provision. There are tremendous efforts by charities for rare diseases such as Deborah and Beacon, to name only two, who have done an enormous amount to bring the patient voice to the table, to empower community among sufferers and to find cures for these diseases. And this has been essential in helping to understand many of the conditions. Deborah, for example, whose president is Wales' own Simon Weston CBE, is leading the way in helping to show the benefits of raising funding for clinical trials to test existing drugs for EB. And the charity is currently trying to raise £5 million for clinical testing. You may have seen in the news the efforts by the fantastic ex-footballer and Liverpool legend, I might add, Graham Souness, who has raised over £1 million towards this by recently swimming the English Channel. But in closing, I feel that we shouldn't have to let charities and individuals do all this on their own. We have a duty to help ensure that patients and their families across Wales have the same consistency of care that they have, the opportunity to access drugs no matter what their condition, and that they are fully involved in understanding their condition. The UK government is currently meeting with charities to discuss the possibility of providing funding for clinical trials for repurposing drugs. I am keen to know if the Health Minister will support these calls by writing to a UK government counterpart. I am also keen to know what specific support is being offered by the Welsh Government in raising awareness of rare diseases amongst not only the Welsh public, but amongst healthcare professionals as well, and given the higher number of people in Wales who will be affected by rare disease at some point in their lives, I would also be keen to know what initiatives the Welsh Government have taken to better understand the clinical pathways that are needed, and how do they propose to improve data collection of those with rare diseases, the care that they need, and the benefits of repurposing drugs for them. Thank you.